Today, I'm just going to chat through my favorite reads of 2024. I almost said 2025. I read about 62 books this year, which is a little bit more than other years. I've had kind of a strange reading year overall, which I think is part of the reason why I've been nervous about making this video. Just in general, I've read a lot of books. I read a lot of books that I liked, but I didn't necessarily love, and so they haven't stayed with me. So when I was looking through my books that I had read, I was like, I like that book, but would it be favorites? I'm probably overthinking the idea of a top book of the year. It really doesn't need to be that deep. But anyways, I have 6 books to talk about that I have really, really loved. I feel slightly bad because I've talked about a lot of these books in recent videos, so it feels a little repetitive. I just had a better reading experience in the second half of the year than in the first half of the year, and so that's why there are just more favorites more recently. Let's just jump in. The first one that I have is In Defense of the Act by Effie Black. This is a recent publication. So it's about a woman named Jessica Miller. She is a scientist living in London, and she studies suicide in animals. She secretly studies it in order to prove that suicide isn't always bad, and that there can be some instances where suicide is beneficial, either for the person or the people around them. This is a very modern book. The main character is a very modern woman. She has modern problems, and I think that just made it feel very relatable and very realistic, a kind of person who has similar struggles with her daily life like I do. And so that's one of the reasons why I really, really loved this. And that's why, even though I read this book over 6 months ago, I still think about it. You flit around different timelines, like Jessica in her current life going to work and dealing with her family, and you flip into the past to see she's explaining how her relationships and friendships have developed and kind of why she has this position on suicide. She's also queer. You see her struggling with relationships and developing strong relationships, maintaining relationships, both romantic relationships and her friendships and her family. Just incredibly funny, incredibly witty and sharp. I feel like a lot of the commentary that the main character had just on certain social situations that I feel like everybody finds themselves in are just so funny and just spot on. I really recommend this book. I think if you like Fleabag or either disaster girl books, it's not quite unhinged. She's not quite an unhinged woman, but she's a little messy, and I like the term woman versus the void. I've read quite a few of those, and a bunch of them this year as well, and this one is my favorite. The next book I want to talk about is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. This is a kind of dystopic, speculative fiction book. It's very open and loose and just kind of a lot of musing and philosophizing about humanity. So the story starts with a group of 40 women are trapped in a bunker. They don't really remember how they got there, and they don't know why they're there, but they're trapped in this cage by these male guards who they're not allowed to interact with. You follow through the main character's perspective. She's significantly younger than the other women in the bunker, so she has no memory of previously life outside of the bunker. All of the other women have a general remembering of who they are and who their family was and what went on in their lives, but it kind of blacks out into how they got into the bunker. But this main character has never known men because she entered the bunker as a kid. You follow her kind of perspectives of the other women in the bunker and the weird things that they're doing, because they're trying to kind of emulate society in the bunker, and it makes her question like why they do things a certain way, and just kind of question norms of society. This novel is just so incredibly unique. I've never read anything like it, and I think it just stuck with me so much. I didn't know a book could be like this, that you could write a story so open and free like it is, but still move people very deeply. It's not, like, I feel like a lot of speculative and like philosophy texts are just so in the air that it's really hard to grasp the concept that the writer is trying to convey. But with this book, it felt so deeply grounding and moving and just so incredibly special. I was reading some quotes online so that I could share it for this video earlier today, and there was just so many, just really opens up your perspective on the world and on life and the experiences that we all share and the experiences that we don't. There were so many quotes that I wanted to share for this video, but I felt like I couldn't because I feel like they're mildly spoilery. So I didn't, but I can just say, if you pick up this book, it is so worth your time. I really recommend it. Let's see, I do have a couple quotes that I thought were still good to share. Survival is never more than putting off the moment of death. This slow dissipation, the gradual abandonment of all expectations, a defeat that had killed everything without a battle. What does having lived mean once you are no longer alive? The next book that I have is Shame by Annie Ernaux, translated from the French by Tanya Leslie. This is like a semi-autobiographical book, memoir thing, piece of writing that Ernaux wrote, as she recalls kind of pieces of her childhood. She almost tries to like pinpoint the moment in her childhood where shame entered and encompassed her life. She grew up in this small French town, quite poor and extremely religious, and so I think shame was kind of all throughout her life growing up. She feels that she's really internalized that shame and feels it very deeply and carried it as a weight throughout her life. And so you flip back and forth between stories in the past and stories of Ernaux. As she's attempting to write this, she's coming across memories of the past. She finds like old photographs or old trinkets that remind her of certain events in the past. I think this is another book where I read it and I was like, I didn't know a book could be like this, because it's almost like a journal, a diary, a memoir. It's like a writing prompt that she gave herself, and that the story follows more of a feeling than it does an event or a plot, which I think is maybe why some people like it less. It doesn't feel structured or like linear. There's no concrete movement through her life because she's just exploring this feeling as it's developed through her life. I feel like the end really culminates and builds up towards why she's telling you all of these stories throughout the beginning of it. I underlined so much in this book, so there's definitely a lot of quotes that I could share, but there's a few in particular. To be like everyone else was people's universal ambition, the ultimate dream. Those who were different were thought to be eccentric or even deranged. The dogs in our neighborhood were all called Rover or Spot. It was essential to learn about other people's lives so that they could be talked about, and to protect one's own so that it couldn't. In our lives, nothing is thought, everything is done. At the age of 12, I was living by the rules and codes of this world. It never occurred to me that there might be others. This is my first Annie Ernaux, and I really want to read more of hers. I'm wondering whether it's better to try and read as many as possible next year and as many as I want to, or if I should kind of save them and spread them out over time so I always have a few to read. Not sure what the best way is. The next one that I'll talk about is Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. This is a fantasy book. It's the third book in the Farseer trilogy. The first one is called Assassin's Apprentice. I also read the second book this year, Royal Assassin, which I loved as well. I think Assassin's Quest I liked just a little bit more. You follow the main character whose name is Fitz. As it starts with him as a young boy. He is the bastard child of the king in waiting, so like the prince, and he's dropped off at the palace doorsteps one day and kind of forced into this life at the palace or at the castle or whatever, where he's not necessarily welcome because he is bastard. I obviously won't really talk about what's in this book in particular because that gets into spoiler territory, but it picks up right where the second book ends. Throughout this whole trilogy, you follow Fitz grow as a person and struggle with being the chosen one and like struggle with being forced into a role instead of just living the life that he wants. He yearns for a simple, peaceful life, but one way or another, he is pushed into an assassin's life or just involved in court politics in general and saving the kingdom. I think this series is an extremely well-written fantasy series. There's so much depth to the world, to the magic systems, to the characters. Fitz in particular is just such an incredible character, and you go on just an absolute emotional journey with him and feel his pain and his joy very, very deeply. I think one of the things that makes this also a more like unique fantasy story is the fact that often you feel so at odds with Fitz. Like you love him as a character, but he's kind of an idiot and he makes bad choices throughout that like you just disagree with and you know he shouldn't be doing. Having that balance in a main character in a fantasy book is pretty unique. I feel like a lot of fantasy books just try and get you to love their main character. So the fact that he is such a gray character just feels more realistic and gives you more to think about as you're reading this series. The writing is gorgeous. Robin Hobb is just such a great writer. There's so much detail to it, which just enhances the story overall. It feels like you're in this world with them. I hope to pick up the next series at some point this year, but the next series is very long and these books are really emotionally like ravaging, so I have to protect my peace a little bit and not just run through them. The next book I will talk about is Stoner by John Williams. This book just follows a man, just one man and his life from start to finish. He is born at the start of the 1900s in a rural town in Missouri. At 18 years old, he's sent to the University of Missouri to study farming, to go back to his parents who are farmers, and instead he becomes enraptured with literature. He studies literature and becomes a professor. That's not a spoiler because the first paragraph of this book tells you everything about him. William Stoner entered the University of Missouri as a freshman in the year 1910 at the age of 19. 8 years later, During the height of World War I, he received his Doctor of Philosophy degree and accepted an instructorship at the same university, where he taught until his death in 1956. He did not rise above the rank of assistant professor, and few students remembered him with any sharpness after they had taken his courses. So it lays it all out for you right there. This book just made me feel so deeply. Another book where it's like, I didn't know you could write like this, because the story is so simple. It's just his life and being a professor at this university. But it's written with such care and with such beautiful language that as his life unfolds and the simplicity of it, you just really deeply understand Stoner and what he wants out of his life. A lot of this book is about living a more simple and like insular life that's very contained, and the meaning behind living a life like that. I feel like a lot of these favorite books, even though on the surface they're extremely different, what I'm saying about them is like the same. Like what I got out of these stories is all the same, and they're all trying to convey some sort of meaning to life. Anyways, it's an absolutely beautiful book. I was like crying at the end of it. And I think the writing just absolutely blew me away. It just feels like Williams was able to capture characters' emotions so powerfully and so well, but without being so like obvious about it. Like he captures it in a beautiful and subtle way. And it's like those feelings that like can't be described. It's not like happy or sad. It's like realizing you've lost the life that you wanted to live, or discovering what you want to do with the rest of your life. Like, how do you convey an emotion like that? Williams does it in this book. He suspected that he was beginning, 10 years late, to discover who he was, and the figure he saw was both more and less than he had once imagined it to be. Those things that he held most deeply were most profoundly betrayed when he spoke of them to his class. What was most alive withered in his words, and what moved him most became cold in its utterance, and the consciousness of his inadequacy distressed him so greatly that the sense of it grew habitual, as much a part of him as the stoop of his shoulders. Last book that I will talk about is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is probably my favorite classic of all time. I absolutely flew through this book. I didn't annotate it at all, even though I loved so many lines, because I just couldn't slow down enough to underline the sentences. I had to keep reading. I probably read this book in about 2 days because I just found it so incredible and so thrilling. I love it when a book just like propels you through the story and that you just cannot stop reading, because it's just like encaptured you so deeply. So if you don't know, this book is about a man called Victor Frankenstein. He is a student studying science at a university where he attempts to make life and make a human from dead body pieces, and he makes the monster. At first, when I started this book, I was very confused because it doesn't start with Frankenstein, it starts with somebody else who is writing letters to his sister while he's on a voyage. He meets Dr. Frankenstein, who then tells him his tale, and that's how the story unfolds. If you read the first 20 pages and you're confused and a little annoyed, don't worry. This book is just written with such grandeur. The language is very sophisticated. It took me a little bit to get into it, like the writing itself, not just the story, but once I like got used to it, I was completely in love with it. And I think that writing style being kind of more verbose and just more intense really fit how dramatic of a book this was. Everything is so extremes. You follow the monster and Frankenstein as they're feeling everything so fucking intensely. Whether it's joy and happiness, it's the best thing in their life. If it's sadness, it's anguish and despair, it's treachery, it's just so extreme. Shelley explores the ethics of giving life to something, as well as just like the responsibility that you have for having done that. Where's like the line of what you can do and what you should do. Just like a deeply human novel about humanity wanting to be loved, wanting to be accepted, wanting to be cherished. I want to reread this and actually annotate it. So maybe I will do that this year and I'll reread this one. But I looked up quotes that I liked so that I could share them with you. Life, although it may only be an accumulation of anguish, is dear to me, and I will defend it. I do know that for the sympathy of one living being, I would make peace with all. I have love in me, the likes of which you can scarcely imagine, and rage, the likes of which you would not believe. If I cannot satisfy the one, I will indulge the other. There is something at work in my soul which I do not understand. Yeah, just another like very deeply philosophical text, which is still very grounded. Okay, that is all that I have to say today. I just want to say thank you for watching this video. I only started my YouTube channel last year, and I've had so many great conversations with people, and can't believe that I have over 1,000 subscribers. That might seem like a small number to a lot of people, but to me it's pretty amazing. And so I just want to say thank you for watching this video and watching any of the other videos that I've put out there. I'm glad that it spoke to anybody. Any of them spoke to anybody. I hope that I've encouraged you to pick up some of these books. I promise I will talk about them less in upcoming videos, so we won't just talk about the same 3 books every time. I'm wishing everybody the best 2025 and the best start of 2025. Let me know what your favorite book of the year is. I could use some like killer recommendations, only the best of the best, because I really want to have a good reading year in 2025. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much. Bye.